Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Weighing In, episode 186, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and sponsored by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all your Nike and USA Wrestling branded wrestling gear. I've always wanted to say this, Mark. I'm a huge media dork. It's bracketology time, baby. Let's go. Let's go.
They're out.
It's bracket time.
Little inconsistent, but we'll talk about that in the next couple of shows, obviously. So let's see what we come up with.
Yes, sir. So what we're going to talk about today are the brackets, where they match up versus the coaches' rankings, the media, the internet source rankings, and then next week we're going to talk about our picks and that kind of stuff. So let's start out with the bracket. Spencer's the 1. Latona's the 2, Courtney's the 3, Hildebrandt's the 4, Teskey is the 5, Camacho is the 6, Lamont the 7, Foley the 8, Schroeder the 9, Heinzelman 10, Ragusin 11, DiAugustino 12, Cronin 13, Jarrett Lane 14, McKee 15, Cody Russell 16. You compare that. Here's the major changes. Brandon Courtney was 3rd in the rankings, but Latona was 4 and Hildebrandt was 2. And then in the coaches' rankings, Courtney was 4. And we've talked about this all year. 4 is a death sentence. You're not making the finals from the 4 hole unless you pull off one of the greatest upsets in NCAA wrestling history. The other thing that stuck out to me, and then I'll turn the floor over to you, is Brody Teskey beating Taylor Lamont changed the rankings of the seedings in this whole weight, because if Lamont had been undefeated, he gets thrown into that Spencer, Hildebrandt, Latona, Courtney mess. So when you saw this, what did you think?
Well, I think Hildebrandt, maybe they're just looking at quality wins. Courtney had a quality win over Teskey because Teskey's in the top 6, actually seeded 5th at the national tournament. Latona had, 2 wins over Camacho. Hildebrandt hasn't had any big wins. He beat, Missouri's starter.
He beat Connor Brown. Yeah.
Connor Brown, but it was a 1-point match. It was a really good match. Then he beat their backup in the finals of the conference tournament. I'm trying to figure out why they changed from one weight bracket to another, but I think that's what they were looking at.
Wait, what do you mean change from one weight bracket to another?
Well, let's look at a perfect example. You have Ragusin. He's number 11 on here.
Yeah. He
lost to Penn State at the Big Tens, who is ranked 23rd?
Well, let's say seeded, not say ranked, okay?
Okay.
Because, we're going off, Howard's the 23, Ragusin's the 11. Here's what I want to get into.
And he beat him heads up. How do you – I understand that he's seated ahead of him. I can live with that. But that big of a drop-off? 11 to 23? And he just lost to him last weekend.
Howard's best win is Ragusin. Ragusin's best win was like Nick Aguilar and some guys like that. This is where it gets
okay.
This is where it gets
not even a starter. So
okay, but he was here's where this all comes down to, Mark. It's where you came in the preseason. Like that's because there's not 25 matches to figure out if you were underranked in the preseason and I was overranked in the preseason. We've never seen this where like 5 guys are undefeated in a weight class or 4 guys are undefeated in a weight class. It doesn't happen. So it's like the best analogy I can give is the NCAA football. Every year we're like, oh my God, like there's 5 weeks to go and there's 8 undefeated teams. Well, it always sorts itself out. It's never a problem because they just play enough games where people lose, or they have conference championship games and Auburn and Georgia both can't be undefeated. So, this sounds nuts. Spencer Lee would be the 1 seed no matter what because of his dominance of wins. But all these other guys, like Jarrett Lee's undefeated. Like this, it's just going to be a mess. I mean, and the matchups are super intriguing to me, and we can talk a little bit about them. I guess we can just touch on them here a little bit. I think Ragus and Danny Vega is interesting in round one. Ragus and Camacho, super interesting to me. Heinzelman Lamont is interesting. And maybe it's just because I saw Lamont and I saw Teskey, wrestle because they were right in front of me. And if the seeds carry, Teskey Hildebrandt's really interesting to me as well. Arizona State's a team that could end up on the podium as a team, and Courtney on the bottom side is huge for them. They don't have an easy path. They're going to have to go through the Lane Barnett winner, and then the Ragus and Vega Camacho quarter, and then the Latona McKee, Robbie Howard, Taylor Lamont, semifinal winner. And Noah Certain down there's he's a hammer too.
Yeah. So I mean, I think he's where he needs to be to give himself a chance to be in the finals. And that's what we had talked about all year long, is that you want to be on the bottom side. No matter what, that's where you want to be. So, kudos. I just don't understand why Hildebrandt goes from number 2 in pretty much every ranking poll, undefeated, and now is the number 4 seed. I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, it has to be what you said. It has to be quality wins.
Yep.
Okay, 33. Here's a perfect example. Dayton 1, RBY the 2, Corbin Myers the 3, DeSanto the 4, Philippi the 5, Schmidt 6, Bird 7, Cannon 8, Michael McGee 9, Louis Hayes 10, Madrigal after a magical Big 12 tournament gets the 11. Let's see, the 12. That's 4 versus 5. Where am I looking for the 12 here?
12's got to be up top.
Jarrett Tremblay, Redding's 13, and yada, yada. Okay, here's a couple things to point out. On this season alone, I think you could argue RBY is the one over Fix. If you just look at body of work this year, he's had better wins. He's DeSanto's only loss. You go by that. But Dayton started number 1, deserved to start number 1, and just didn't lose his spot. But that's what, and it's very likely Dayton would have been undefeated, all year, but especially in this season, because he missed like 4 duels, with how goofy the season was. But the big thing here, and I think you and I talked about this, I thought Corbin Myers would I thought he'd at least get the 4 seed and maybe the 3 seed because he was undefeated. And it creates some interesting matchups. The 3-6 match is Myers Schmidt, and the 4-5 matchup is now DeSanto Philippi. And, those are pretty interesting matchups. Lucas Bird, I don't see anybody even testing RBY till the semis. Do you?
I think Bird, I don't think he's going to major Bird. I think Bird had a really good Big Tens. I think he's hard to score on. So I'm not sure that's going to be a bonus point match, but I really think DeSanto's, people could argue that he's the 3rd best kid at the weight. I think he's happy being where he's at. He's already wrestled DeSanto twice this year. I think if I was him, I'd rather wrestle Dayton in the semis if you get that far, because you're seeing somebody you haven't seen in over a year.
Well, he's only wrestled him once this year because he's 7-1, not twice.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
But RBY seems to have his number. He just wrestles he hides that one elbow and gets a takedown, and that's it. One of the more interesting things here to me was Michael McGee, because he was a top 10 guy all year, needed a wild card, and he's not the highest wild card, but he's one of the highest wild cards in any bracket at 9.
Yes.
So, and again, the Arizona State team continues, like that's a guy they need to get on that 6, 7, 8 line to get extra points. And this must have been a mess of a way to seed with all the Big 12 guys. Because, Madrigal, look, Zach Price is 14-4, Madrigal 6-8, but Madrigal placed ahead of him in the bracket, like you said, 4 days ago.
Yeah.
So 41, Ironman 1, Nick Lee 2, Sebastian Rivera 3, Tariq gets the 4, Demas gets the 5, Alan Hart gets the 6, and we'll talk about it, Ian Parker 7, Chad Redd was the big faller here, 8. Dresden Simon 9. To give people perspective on this, Chad Red was tied for 5th in the coaches poll and was ranked 4th. Now really close to Tariq for 4th, and actually really close to Demas for 4, 5, 6. It's just a fraction off. But I think what they did here, the first 3 were pretty simple. Tariq's undefeated, so that's why he gets the 4. Demas wins the Big 12. That's why he gets the 5. Alan Hart beat Ian Parker head-to-head. That's why he gets the 6. Ian Parker took 2nd, and I think they decided that was better than Chad Red, who took 4th in a conference. Now, granted, it's behind the top 3 guys in the country, so you could argue Red is anywhere 4th through 8th. That's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah, I guess this is kind of where the inconsistency starts for me, David, because if you go back to 133, they got DeSanto 4, and he lost in the finals. He was ranked 3rd. He's ranked 3rd on all the sheets, but they took a conference champ from the ACC. And I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. Okay. Now they turn around at the next weight. Sebastian Rivera gets 3rd in the Big Tens, and Tariq gets 1st in the ACC, yet they keep Sebastian as the number 3 seed. They weren't consistent through the bracket.
That's a great point. So Tariq.
So I'm thinking, okay, well, wait a minute. Maybe Sebastian has better quality wins. He doesn't. He hasn't really wrestled anybody this year that's ranked in the top 6 or 7 or 8, except for Lee. And he lost to Lee in the semis of the Big Ten. And I think, I really think the number 4 seed from North Carolina State, he had a good win in the finals over a ranked kid. I don't understand why they changed it at 41 and didn't change it at 33.
He beat Sherman twice, right? He beat Sherman in the duel, and he beat him in the ACC finals. And it's a very good point. And people should know, you and I talk a ton this time of the year, but the brackets just came out last night, and we intentionally didn't talk a lot about these because I just wanted your points on the air. And that's a great point. Somebody had actually posted they thought Tariq could get the 2 on Twitter if you just go through the formula. But here's the problem. Like, you and I follow this. You didn't even see the coaches poll come out. The coaches poll wasn't on wasn't on track, flow, open mat. It might be now. We're recording this at 10 in the morning on Thursday, and we go up at noon on Friday. But I had to go to the NCAA website. You shouldn't have to do that, right? And the coaches poll, and look, I'm not accusing anybody specifically of anything, but I can tell you 6 or 7 coaches over the years have called me and said, hey, I need to rank this guy this way because this school's going to rank this guy that way for me. Coaches should probably not be doing rankings. One, they're not watching people all year. Like guys like you and me, we're not coaching anybody. Like it's a lot easier to do the rankings when A, you don't have a horse in the race, and B, you can watch all the races.
Sure.
And then people are trading votes. Like that's a problem. So, I mean, the coaches poll is a portion as a part of the formula for the seeding. So Demas Tariq Wilson, if that match happens, is fascinating to me. Woods Willett's first round is the Pac-12 final rematch, right?
I know it.
I mean, but that's correct, right?
It is correct. Yes. And Woods got pinned.
Right.
Earl Wood got pinned. I guess, he's probably now, we had heard rumors that he'd just been working out with a high school team and getting prepared, and just in case he came back, and then he came back. I'm sure he's back in the college room getting ready for the NCAAs. I'm guessing he's going to be in a little better shape this weekend. So he could actually make some noise.
So for people that don't follow this as closely as we do, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they wrestled a match last weekend. They didn't wrestle a duel. Bakersfield sent a guy to Stanford for Real Woods to beat twice to get 2 matches. And Stanford gave a guy to Chance Rich from Bakersfield so that he could get in. Apparently it's legal, but no, I didn't know you could. Well, if it wasn't legal, they wouldn't use it. But who knew you could wrestle meets between not even a meet, I'm sorry, matches. You could wrestle matches between the conference tournament in the national tournament. I didn't even know that was possible.
Well, we're learning some things. And I want the listeners to understand, I don't think Sebastian Rivera is the fourth best kid at that weight, to be honest with you. I do think he's the third best, but I think the NCAA has to be consistent on how they seed the national tournament. That's all I'm saying.
It honestly, it feels like every year they start one way and then they get tired and they just go another way.
Yeah, and then they'll go back to their original way at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. 49, Sasso 1, O'Connor 2, Brock Muller 3, Bulu Allen 4, Ridge Lovett probably makes sense 5, Bryson Donian 6, Jonathan Milner, super low profile this year 7, 8 is Jaden Abbas, 9 is Legend Lamer, 10 is Mike Van Brill, 11 is Kanan Storr, 12 is Max Murin, 13 is Rip Your Head Off Mitch Moore. So a couple things to point out here. At 49, the coaches had Sasso 1, and in the rankings, the pollsters had O'Connor 1. So that's a big difference because it completely flips the bracket. For example, I think Bulu Allen had a better matchup against Austin O'Connor than he does against Sammy Sasso. Mahler O'Connor to me is interesting because Mahler's super comfortable just wrestling a one takedown match, going into overtime, riding you. O'Connor's not that way, but he's an Ironman guy. He's very, very good if you shoot a lot. You will probably get caught in a cradle at some point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, him and Sasso, I was really looking forward to seeing. Could still obviously happen, could happen in the finals. But I mean, the flip-flop there of the 1 and the 2 changes a lot of things. And Jaden Abbas having a huge conference tournament bumps him way up. Ridge Lovett bumps way up. And Jaden Abbas's reward for getting all the way up to the 8 seed is he gets Yaya first round.
Yeah. And, this is one of the weights, obviously UNCO.
Northern Colorado.
Yep.
Andrew
Alira's number 32 seed. I mean, wow. I mean, he's got, I know he's hurt. I know he's banged up, but that kid's got a lot of talent. He would have been ranked in the top 5 if he was healthy. But I think this weight is pretty set in stone. I don't have really any issues with this weight, David. I think they did a pretty good job seeding it.
Okay, I'll take umbrage with he wouldn't have been top 5 if you said he makes the Big 12 finals and loses to Boo, because he's not going to be above Ridge Lovett, who just ran the table. But he's probably in the top 8. But where the inconsistency is, Alira's goes 32, and we're about to get to Mackay, who didn't wrestle in the conference tournament either. So it's another example.
Yep.
All right, we go to 57. Deacon 1, Hidley 2, David Carr 3, Delvecchia 4, Caleb Young 5, Brayton Lee 6, Jared Jacuse is 7. Me and Mark argue every week about how to pronounce that guy's name. Jared Franek is 8. Kendall Coleman is 9. The 10 seed is Justin Thomas. The 11 seed is Ja'Cory Teemer, and so on. So Berge 12, Willits 13, and Will Lewan is 14. So a couple things here. This is a perfect example of where you started is where you finished. Because Deacon, Hidley, and Carr, and even Delvecchia, all undefeated. The first 3 guys have had super dominant seasons. In a lot of years, let's put it this way. If David Carr had started number 1 this year, he would not have done anything to be knocked out of that spot. Same thing with Hayden Hidley.
Yep.
So, but here's the thing. They're not supposed to count last year. Last year's not supposed to count. But it does.
It does,
and it does because Deacon beat Hidley and Hidley beat Carr. And Deacon beat Carr.
Yep.
So I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying.
In one weekend. It all happened in one weekend.
Vegas?
Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, this is just some interesting stuff here that, I don't really know what to think of that. The 5-12 match here, if they both advance, Caleb Young, Brady Berge is interesting because they wrestle a lot of close matches. Franek made the Big 12 finals. Him and Kendall Coleman are really interesting matchups of style. And
Agreed.
Ja'Cory Teamer and Brayton Lee, if they advance, are a really interesting contrast in styles. I think, you know, and if Teamer were to pull the upset, him and David Carr, there might be a few athletic scrambles in that match.
But do you see any major issues with this weight, David?
No.
I think it's kind of like 149. I didn't really see anything that stood out and said, you guys got it wrong. I think they got this fairly right. It was pretty dry cut.
Well, here's where I'll tell you where they weren't consistent. Chase Saldati took 4th in the Big Ten, and he's not the 4th highest seed from the Big Ten. And at 33, Madrigal took 2nd in the Big 12, and he was the 2nd highest guy seeded from the Big 12, and he had a losing record. Saldati's got a winning record. So again, it's not consistent, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a minor thing, but maybe it's not minor, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's not minor to the kids that it's happening to. But.
Well, the other thing is this. I've always hated it. People go, just let them wrestle, the best guy win. Okay, maybe, right? Maybe. But B, they place 8 guys and 25 guys score points, and those points matter. Those points matter to the rest of your life. Like, you go to the Nationals, I was in the blood round. Well, you're not in the blood round if you have to wrestle Ryan Deacon first round and Hayden Hidley second round. Willie Saylor posted, and you guys can ping us if you know this. There was a kid one year at Fargo, because of the way the lines were drawn, he had Kyle Snyder and Jaden Cox the first 2 rounds of Fargo. The guy went 0-2, clearly. Well, he might have gone 4-2 if he had had 4 bums before he got those 2 guys.
Sure.
I mean, maybe he was terrible, but probably it's just as likely he wasn't terrible. I mean, he's at Fargo. He's probably pretty good.
Yep.
Okay, 65.
Oh, boy.
Here we go. Marinelli 1. Anthony Valencia 2. Jake Wenzel 3. Makai Lewis 4. Zach Hartman 5. The 6 seed is Keegan O'Toole. The 7 seed is Ethan Smith. The 8 seed is Shane Griffith. The 9 seed is Luke Weber. The 10 seed is Travis Whitley. The 11 seed is Cam Amin. And the 12 seed is, where am I looking here? Jake Keating.
Yeah.
You want to go first here?
Oh, boy. What do you say? Early in the year, the number 1 ranked kid is now the number 4 seed in Makai Lewis. Number 2 ranked kid was Alex Marinelli, who's ranked number 1. The number 3 ranked kid was, go ahead, David, you can say it, Shane Griffith. Shane Griffith was the 3. Was the 3. And
no, was he or was it Whitley?
No, it was Shane.
Okay, so 3 goes to 8 and 4 goes to 10.
Yep. So, I mean, Alex has not had the best draws at the national tournament. Obviously, let's go back to the old saying. If you're going to be the best, you got to beat the best. You're going to have to beat these guys. But it would have been nice to see him with a normal path. So it is what it is. I just don't see how some of these guys have 2 losses and they're ranked ahead of the guy that has 1 loss. And I just don't get it, I guess. I'll figure it out. I'm struggling just like everybody else trying to figure out some of these rankings. And so.
Well, it's not just amount of losses, right? It's quality wins. I'm not sure Shane Griffith isn't the 8. I mean, Marinelli's the 1. I think, again, because it's where you started last year. Valencia's the 2. He beat Griffith. Wenzel beat Makai twice, or, placed ahead of him twice, beat him in the injury default match. Makai gets a ton of respect for being the defending national champion because God only knows if he can wrestle. Zach Hartman probably is the biggest benefactor of this because if Makai can't wrestle, he's not going to wrestle somebody higher than the 12 seed until he gets to the semis. That's huge for Bucknell. Okay. O'Toole, everybody been sleeping on O'Toole all year. The NCAA bracket tournament's got this one right, I think. He's a top 6 guy. And then the 7 seed is Ethan Smith, who's only lost to Hammers in the Big Ten. So, I mean, that's how you get to Griffith at 8. Travis Whitley, this is nuts. I mean, this is nuts. Like, Michael McGee goes from being 7th, losing a match to a guy who's not even seated above him, and drops to 9. Travis Whitley would have, if he had won, he would have been the 2 seed.
Yes.
He would have been the 2 seed in nationals. It would have been Marinelli and then him, because he was above Valencia. The worst he would have been was 3 if they said Valencia beating Griffith hopscotches him. He goes from 3 to 10 for losing an overtime match.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's a terrible draw for Ethan Smith and Valencia. That's not the guy you won in the 10 hole.
No.
Because that dude could make the finals.
Well, Ethan Smith, I guess, at 7, you know, he did lose to Marinelli, and he lost early in the year to Bronigal from Illinois.
Yeah.
Now,
But he
Bronigal,
avenged that loss. Yeah.
He did avenge that loss, but there's his 2 losses where, you know, Shane Griffith lost to the number 2 seeded kid in the country right now. I just think they really punished him for that one loss. Now, he may not have had a lot of quality wins, but I don't think Smith had a lot of quality wins in those wins either, because the 2 best kids at that time in the Big Ten were Marinelli and Bronigal. So
yeah, but he has to have beaten, without looking at it, like he has to have beaten a Peyton Robb or Andrew Sparks or more guys in the brackets just because of the strength of the Big Ten.
yeah.
So, I mean, you know, you're picking, it's really close. You're picking nits there because Griffith loses to the 2 guy and Smith loses to the 1 guy. Smith has another loss, which he avenged. So that's a coin flip. And maybe, and they probably shouldn't do this, maybe they did it this way so Marinelli and Smith, who are in the same conference, don't meet in the quarters.
Possibly.
Right. 70. Although there's a bunch of first round conference matchups here that are insane.
Yeah,
So
if you look at 157, I think they have 4 Big Ten guys all in the same bracket. So yeah. So, you know.
Kemmerer 1. Demetrius Romero gets the 2. Carter Starachi 3. Mikey Labriola 4. Logan Massa 5. We go to the 6 seed, Andrew McNally. Caleb Romero is 7. 8 is Bullard. 9 is DJ Washington. 10 is Peyton Mako. 11 is Austin Murphy. 12 is Bernie Truax. Okay, Kemmerer 1 was kind of a no-brainer. Yep. Romero really kind of makes sense, but I mean, like, here's the thing. If you're going to go on undefeated guys, how is Austin Murphy the 11th? We can start anywhere you want. I mean, I thought you and me both thought Romero or Starachi would go 2, 3 in some order. Yep. It's not a great draw for Kemmerer in the sense that Labriola, a guy who's wrestled him really close, is on his side of the bracket.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, like, I'm just looking at matchups. I watched Anthony Mantanone. He'd get out of bed and pin his mom in the morning. He's got Mako first round. I mean, that's not a great draw for Mako. Dustin Plott, if he's healthy, is a lot better than the 18th best guy. So it'll be interesting to see how he does as well.
I don't know what to even go with this. Labriola, I think Michael Kemmerer feels more, and I don't know this, but I'm just guessing, feels more comfortable wrestling somebody like Starachi, who's a true freshman, because he can kind of pick him apart in certain areas. I don't think you can pick Labriola apart because he's been around for so long and they've wrestled a few times. They know each other very well. So I think it makes it a little more difficult for him. But Labriola, I mean, he's going to have some good matches. I like this UNI kid. And if he's not, you know, he likes to do some junk. Labriola does, and so does the UNI kid. He does. He's good. Yeah, he's good at it. And then all of a sudden, then he's got Massa after that. Now, he did beat up Massa at the Big Tens, but I don't think Massa wrestled very well. And if he's on his game, that's not a great draw for him either.
Correct. Well, you get to a point in the tournament, you get to the quarterfinals, there's no good draws, right? There's just terrible draws and hard draws, you know? So, all right, 184. Aaron Brooks won. Okay, they went Hidley 2, Dupre 3. Here's where I would have lost a lot of money. Parker Keckheisen 4. I'm not saying it's wrong. Hunter Bolin 5. Poznansky 6. Britt Wilson 7, the Missouri kid. Shout out to Mexico, Missouri. Taylor Venz 8. Jeremiah Kent 9. Tate Samuelson 10. Let's see who's 11.
Dakota Gear.
Dakota Gear's 11. And so Brand's 12, Weiler 13, etc. So, all right, help me with this because I was doing the Big 12. So maybe I missed something. Didn't Taylor Venz make the finals of the Big 10 wrestling tournament?
He did.
How is he seated behind Poznansky?
I have no idea. I haven't figured out why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, I'm just.
Well, no, I'm not talking about I'm just talking about this one thing. How is that possible?
He lost to Brands first match of the year by a major, and then Rutgers beat Brands for third and fourth of the Big Ten. I don't know. I'm throwing out scenarios.
Okay, so that's one crazy thing, right?
Yep.
We knew they could go a bunch of different ways here. We just thought it'd all be 2, 3, 4, some combination of Dupre, Hidley, Bolin. Bolin getting the 5 is really not that different than the 4, obviously. They meet in the quarters, and Keckheisen would have certainly been the 5. Yes. So, I mean, it's weird because now Keckheisen gets Colbray, so that's a conference matchup right away. And then Weiler, where Bolin gets Lehigh and then gets Nelson Brands. That's not a great draw for Nelson Brands because he's not going to out-physical Hunter Bolin. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yes, I would have to agree with that, except he will fight you for 7 minutes, and that wears when these kids have not wrestled 2 matches, they haven't done it this year. They've wrestled maybe 2 matches in a weekend at a try or something, or a quad. They may get 3 matches, and then they're off for a week. They're going to have to wrestle 2 matches, come back the next day and wrestle 2 matches. Some of them are going to lose. They're going to have to wrestle 3 matches. It's going to be a different feel for them. So
Nelson Brands can do damage on the back, but Hunter Bolin wrestles 11 o'clock and then and again at 6 o'clock. He ain't going to be tired for that round.
No, 16. But I mean, Brands wears on you. So that's just the way he wrestles. He makes it hard for you. I think overall it does wear on a guy's body when you get into that second day, when somebody's been hitting on your head for, 7 minutes. He does not scoring off it, but he's going to keep snapping on that head. You're going to be a little stiff the next day.
Yeah. 197, fascinating bracket to me. Miles Amin 1, that made sense. Eric Schultz 2, that made sense. Cordell Norfleet 3, that made sense. Ferrari 4. So, and then, I'm sorry, Jacob Warner's 5, Bonacorsi 6, Rocky Elam 7. And here's a great thing. Buchanan, Noah Adams, 8-9, round 4 of those guys if they both win their first matchup. Yeah. Okay, so here's what we talked about. There's a ton of parity at this weight. There's nobody who's made the national finals at this weight. Okay, Noah Adams was the number 1 guy in the preseason. He's 13-3, but he's 0-3 against Buchanan. He's 1-0 against Ferrari, but Ferrari thumped Buchanan, almost got a major to win the Big 12 title for Oklahoma State.
Yep.
So this presents some interesting matchups. So first of all, if you go to the bottom quarter bracket, Schultz has to wrestle maybe Beard second round and Rocky Elam in the quarters. Rocky Elam's have Cam Caffey in round 2. So, I mean, I'm really familiar with both those guys. Rocky's a kid out of Staley High School in Kansas City. Cam Caffey's from Carbondale, right across the river here in Illinois and Missouri. Schultz, Beard, that's an interesting matchup. Bonacorsi's a guy that'll shoot a million times. That might not feed into so great for him and the Norfleet's go-behinds. Ferrari, Warner, that's again like a guy who's going to try to stick you versus a guy who's going to try to pull on your head and get you tired. Buchanan Adams is a hellacious round of 16 match. And then, the winner gets the guy who's on the Olympic team for San Marino.
Yeah.
So
I think, and we had talked about this, David, I think Ferrari is a matchup nightmare for pretty much anybody, because when was the last time you saw a 197-pounder wrestle from his knees? Pretty much the whole match. Until you've actually wrestled somebody that's down on his knees, it's a whole different feel. You're not looking to shoot single legs on a guy that there's no legs there to shoot on. You got to shoot to a side. You got to do an outside single. You got to keep your head in perfect position. But this guy can pile drive you right to the mat from his knees. He's that good and he's that strong. So
and he also attacks. A lot of guys that wrestle on their knees attack. He also does this thing where he goes in a stagger stance, turns his body sideways, and he's baiting you to shoot, and then just this little step around behind, for an easy go behind. All right.
I would have thought, just me personally, that the seating committee would have put Nordfleet at 2. Conference champ, undefeated, and put Schultz at 3. But they keep going back and forth. This is what they're doing. They're going back and forth. One weight they do it, the next weight they don't, the next weight they do, next weight they don't. So that there's no consistency. And Northfleet went all over this year wrestling, because Arizona State did not stay in their conference and wrestle. They went out and tried to find matches. He wrestled against Buchanan.
He pinned Buchanan the same day Buchanan beat Noah Adams.
Yep. So I think he should have been rewarded for that. I think he should have been the number 2. Now, obviously, they're on the same side, him and Schultz. I think Schultz should have been the 3. I had no problems with him being the 3, but just inconsistency. That's what I'm saying.
Yep. Heavyweight, Gable 1, Paris 2, Matt Stencil 3, Colton Schultz 4. Those are your undefeated guys. Tony Cassiope gets the 5. A lot of people thought he might get the 3. The 6 is Gannon Gremmel. The 7 is Ethan Laird. The 8 is Jordan Wood. The 9 is Greg Kirkfleet. The 10 is undefeated Deontay Wilson. So that's interesting. And the 11 is Zach Elam, another guy, that's Rocky's older brother. Christian Lance, Brian Andrews, who won the Big Tens a year ago. Carter Isley, who had a bad Big Ten tournament. And then Luke Luffman, top 16. So a couple things to point out here. Kirkfleet Cassiope was the 3rd place match at the Big Tens where Cassiope majored him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Cassiope, Colton Schultz is a super interesting quarterfinal. Cassiope's used to pushing people around and bullying him in upper body. They've actually wrestled in Greco. I watched the matches. Cassiope beat him the first match, and then Schultz dismantled him the next 2 matches. So it's not a great matchup for Cassiope. He's not going to bully Colton Schultz in those upper body positions. That's not going to happen.
No. But he's better on the, I think he's probably better on the mat. And I think that's maybe where it comes down to.
Who's better?
Cassiope. He's really good on top, David. Really good on top. So that may make the difference. But Cassiope beat Stencil last year. Now, they're saying that they don't look at last year, but obviously they kind of do. I mean, otherwise Lewis would not be the number 4 seed.
Well, they didn't look at it at this weight, though.
No.
I mean, so at least in that direct aspect.
Yep.
So Stencil's the 3, and Gannon Gremmel's the 6. Zach Elam's pretty freaking good. I mean, if he beat Gremmel, it wouldn't shock me. He would have then, and he lost to Laird in the semis of the MAC. He didn't wrestle Stencil.
What do you think about Hilger?
He's the 14. He's got Heinzelman, the freshman, and then Stencil. I mean, it's not a great draw. It's not a terrible draw for a 14 seed, right?
Yep.
Deontay Wilson's an interesting dude. Wins a lot of close matches. Apparently won them all this year. He's a much bigger guy than Laird. So if Laird doesn't get a takedown, that's probably favors Deontay Wilson if they go to the rideouts. I mean, that's a long way. We haven't started the tournament yet. We're talking about overtime.
Sure.
But that's a thing. So, and then, I mean, I also think that Ethan Laird against Nathan Traxler is an interesting one because you know, those are two guys that are not big for the weight. That's going to be a pretty athletic first round match, but you know, neither one of them can just get big and ride the other guy, that kind of thing, you know?
Yes.
So we got about 2-3 minutes left. I
You
think
want to go into the team rankings real quick?
now let's talk about that next week. We'll talk about the
Okay.
team rankings and make our predictions. Or, you know, yeah, really dig deep in the brackets and talk about where things can go and how that affects the team race. If what we think happens.
I would like to do a shout out to my son, Ben. Turned 34 today.
I know. I
Nice.
saw it on Facebook.
Nice job, Ben.
I saw him
go.
last weekend.
Yeah,
I was
no-
with him. Yeah, he was at the Big 12s.
And my
All right.
youngest son, Thomas, is going to be a dad. So that means I get to be a grandpa for the first time. So he's they're expecting in August. So
You certainly act old enough to be a grandpa. So it's probably about time that happened.
I can't wait.
Parting shot as we sign off. I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, sharing. We'll be back next week before the national tournament. Instead of doing a Matt chat, we're going to do one last wing in before the national tournament. Mark and I are going to probably do a bracket deep dive, tell you what we think, help you guys get your fantasy teams ready. You can tell us where we're right and wrong. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate USA Wrestling. We appreciate Nike. Thank you guys for everything. We'll talk to you all next week.